Hello and welcome to our final Off the Planet Extra for 2022. I'm John Barron.
I'm still Chaz Licciardello.
You still are. What a week it has been, Chaz. Just when we thought we'd be winding down after the midterm, suddenly Trump is off and running, and so too is the Special Counsel investigating, well, not Trump by name, just attempts to overturn the result of the 2020 presidential election and taken a bunch of documents to, I don't know, let's just call it Mar-a-Lago in Florida.
It's definitely about Trump because not only, as you say, the topic's very Trumpy, but on top of that, they've specifically excluded the parts of the 2020 investigation that involve all the punters.
Yeah.
So, yes, it's not just Trump. It could be politicians, for instance. For instance, Marjorie Taylor Greene might have an appearance. But it's basically Trump.
Yeah, and this is being done because, they want to create the appearance of impartiality. Just as in the old days, the Attorney General was supposed to be independent and free from political pressure from the President, but we saw in the Trump years that that is no longer guaranteed. The appointment of a special prosecutor, a special counsel, or an independent counsel is supposed to give that investigation even greater arm's distance from politics. Merrick Garland, who is himself a Biden appointee, appointing somebody. I mean, does Trump have a point, do you reckon, when he says, this is a Liberal hatchet job, it's another witch hunt, it's all, or is this actually going to be an objective, independent investigation?
Well, I'd ask, what would satisfy him? And the answer is nothing.
Sure.
How could you make it more impartial than having a special counsel?
I mean, this guy, to be fair, not to side with Trump necessarily, but this guy is a stone cold killer. I mean, he's prosecuted war crimes cases in the former in Kosovo, and he's specialised in election related crimes, including, I might add, you mentioned in the show, he's prosecuted a couple of high-level Republicans. He was also involved in the prosecution, recommending a prosecution against former Democratic vice presidential nominee and Senator John Edwards, who was accused of taking large amounts of money from old Bunny Mellon in the day. And that case ultimately got to court and there was mistrial in the end. It was the jury fell apart.
What I would say, though, is I think Trump has a point. The thing which I raised in the show, which hasn't got a lot of play, so maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think I am, that I think that is actually a real cause for concern from him. They have set up this. What I'm referring to is in the conditions, when they give instructions, the Attorney General gives instructions when they appoint a special counsel, which the special counsel has to hew very closely to. And in the conditions, they have not provided any bar for prosecutions whatsoever. Normally, they provide a bar. As they say, the phrase is usually necessary and appropriate before they recommend prosecutions. All the special prosecutions, the special counsellors that we've seen, and all the investigations that we've seen over the last few years have had that same phrase, but they took it out for the first time. These guys are top lawyers. That's not an accident. Those are standard terms. They chose to take out the standard term that the special counsel had to consider whether it was necessary and appropriate to recommend prosecutions. They took it out to set him up to prosecute. And so if I was Trump, I'd be going, hang on, this is a setup. It's not that the guy's biased. It's that they've set him up so him being unbiased will lead to a much greater chance of me being prosecuted. And what's going on there? And I think he would have a great point if he noticed that.
Pity he doesn't get terrific lawyers.
It's an execution squad, I'm telling you. And we've had this conversation before, and I was saying, I don't think Merrick Garland is going to recommend prosecution. Is going to prosecute him. And it turns out that Merrick Garland hasn't.
No, but he's got somebody to do it for him.
He's got someone to do it for him, which is easier for Merrick Garland. And in actual fact, the irony of all this is that Trump kind of set this up himself by trying to go early to, we mind read here, we don't know for a fact, but everyone thinks that Trump went early.
Sam Nunberg told us last week, this is about heading off the investigation.
Exactly. And
trying to make life awkward for Merrick Garland because it makes him look political. So this is a bit of a power play for Merrick Garland. And
I would argue that Trump, by trying to be tricky, he set up his own demise because I don't think Merrick Garland was going to pull the lever. I think it was too much political pressure, but this allows him to avoid doing that. So by Trump going early, Merrick Garland can go, well, he's now a candidate, so I have to do a special prosecution. So it lets Merrick Garland off the hook. And Trump's nailed himself, I think.
Yeah, what about the timing of this? Because back in the day when Robert Mueller reported, he said, well, one of his reasons for not recommending an indictment against Donald Trump was, well, because you cannot indict a sitting president, he accepted that precedent. Therefore, it would be wrong for him to be seen to be recommending an indictment because Trump would therefore not be in a position to defend himself in a court because he wasn't going to be charged while president. That was part of Mueller's rationale for squibbing in the way that he did. Yeah. No such sensitivities around Trump now, except that, as Merrick Garland noted in the timing of this, well, he's now off and running to be president again. And one of the accusations is that he tried to steal the last election from Joe Biden, who is also saying that he's off and running again. Now, what does this mean in terms of the time frame? Some pundits have said this will be over in 4 or 5 months, April, March next year, which would mean effectively it would be at the very start still of a Republican primary if the first Republican candidate debate, which would usually be scheduled for around June, July of 2023. So we will know by then, probably on the first debate, you know, if they're going to do it again at the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library, whether he is going to be under indictment at that, and knowing, I mean, this is election interference in a way. It is going to potentially have a material effect on it. We don't know if it helps Trump or hurts him, but it's probably going to turn more Republican voters off than on him. Yeah,
look, once again, what's the alternative? I mean, I agree, it does interfere with the election, but when you've got a candidate who is reasonably suspected of committing crimes, you can't just let them go. And you can't go much earlier than they've gone.
And the evidence in the documents case, not if you abide by the Justice Department memo that says you don't make big announcements, certainly not 30 days before an election, but best not 90 days before an election. So, yeah, they didn't have a lot of time between the Mar-a-Lago search and catching, basically, Trump. It seems pretty red-handed in that affair. Whether that's ultimately going to be enough to see him criminally convicted, we don't yet know. But, yeah, look, the timing is awkward in all of this, but it does, you know, I mean, Trump is already saying this is a politicised thing, and this further erodes confidence in both the FBI and the Justice Department. Nobody gets out of this alive, do they?
Well, that's just the nature of when there is a politician associated with crimes, it becomes political. It has to. It has to affect everyone. It just has to. I was going to say the politicised angle for me that's I think more interesting is Trump. I think makes a reasonable call, saying, well, hang on. Where is the special counsel for Joe Biden? If your concern is, I know it's typical for Trump to go, well, what about you? But in this case, I think he's right. If the situation is that the problem is Trump's running for president, well, so's Joe Biden. So why isn't there a conflict of interest on the investigation into Hunter Biden, which is actually an investigation of Joe Biden?
So just recap, what would be if you were yourself prosecuting the case against Hunter Biden and Joe Biden, based on what is known rather than what has necessarily just been reported in some parts of the internet about what was or was not on the laptop, because there's a lot of misinformation, a lot of lies about the laptop. But based on what has been credibly sourced and so on, what would the case against both Hunter and maybe Joe Biden be?
Well, at this point in time, I think it's pretty clear that at least there's evidence that Joe Biden knows more than he said he knew, at the very least. Joe Biden saying, I've never even talked to Hunter Biden about his business dealings at all. And yet there's considerable evidence of Joe Biden having meetings with Hunter Biden's business partners. And Hunter Biden's business partners saying they met with Joe Biden to talk about business. And thank you emails and emails saying, oh, I look forward to talking to Joe Biden about this business offer, etc. So there is so I think there's a reasonable amount of evidence that he lied about that. But that's not the issue.
The plausible argument there would be for Biden, and we don't yet know what Joe Biden said or didn't say in any of those meetings. And given that he spent 36 years in the Senate and 8 years as Vice President, you get pretty good at not getting yourself into areas of illegal influence and illegal lobbying and so on. And I have no doubt at all that, particularly when he was in the depths of addiction and desperation, that Hunter Biden was peddling access to his father as something he could commodify. He could make money to pay for his lifestyle, pay for his prostitutes, pay for his drugs by going into business with people who'd pay him a lot of money because of his last name. The Biden name was a commodity, and getting them through the door at the White House for a sit-down, a Diet Pepsi with Joe, that's another $200,000 in Hunter's drug dealer's pocket.
That's right, and that's not great, but that is not real. That's not what Joe Biden would go down for. If Joe Biden was going down, it would be for actual corrupt dealings. With Joe Biden himself having corrupt dealings, getting paid off, whatever. Joe Biden doing something for people for money or whatever. There's no evidence of that, only supposition. And I might say people play very fast and loose with when Joe Biden was vice president and when he wasn't.
Right.
Because when he wasn't vice president, he can get away with a lot more than when he was. And the dates tend to slip in these kinds of pieces of evidence. As well as that, I think there is a there are a lot of questions about whether he actually got paid for anything. I've seen no evidence. I've seen evidence of intention, but I've seen no evidence of actual payment. So there's more. There's certainly evidence enough to merit an investigation.
Yep.
But there is not evidence to convict him at this point in time, which isn't a surprise.
As Richard Nixon said, the American people have a right to know if their president's a crook. And it would be surprising, based on the fact that Joe Biden has not been a crook for half a century in public life. But, I guess the question then is the same crowd that brought us the Benghazi investigation, the people to be running this investigation through Congress, or is it better that an independent counsel looks at this?
There should be an independent counsel. Right. And I should say, Trump's not in a position to criticise, even though I think he's got a point. Because the reason why there isn't a special counsel at the moment is because there is a US attorney doing this. And the person who appointed the US attorney was Donald Trump. Donald Trump had the opportunity to appoint a special counsel. Nothing's changed since Trump was president. He chose not to appoint a special counsel. He chose to appoint a US attorney. And the US attorney is still at it. No one's interfered with the US attorney. There's no suggestion that anyone's interfered with the US attorney. But I think that let's put it this way: they're looking for these bank records, these SAR records. If those SAR records show anything at all, any evidence at all that Joe Biden had actual involvement in these business dealings, then I think there is a case for a special counsel. My suspicion is the Democrats kind of know there's going to be a special counsel. They're trying to put it off as long as they possibly can.
Is this just going to be like Donald Trump's tax returns? They're going to keep fighting this and say, oh, you can't have them, you can't see them?
I suspect so. I suspect so. But I think their hope is that special counsel gets appointed late enough that it'll go past the election. Yeah,
so speaking of the Biden family and Hunter Biden's daughter Naomi was married at the White House over the weekend.
On the same weekend that he turned 80.
Right, so Joe Biden turns 80 today. Very low-key, apparently just a family morning tea. So the Biden clan had all flown to the White House for the wedding, and apparently the reports suggest that Joe Biden didn't want to make a big deal about his birthday, didn't want to remind people that he's turned 80 and that there's never been a president 80 before, and yet this is also at a time when he said that he's going to be talking to his family about whether he should be running for president again in 2024. We've spoken to a few people on the program about the fact that Democrats are keen to give him a bit of space to have that conversation with his family, to think about it. But we've also seen that the polls show that 58% of Americans don't believe that Joe Biden has the mental acuity to serve as president of the United States. And to a large extent, that is about his age. And there's no escaping that. And it's a fascinating conundrum for him, because on the one hand, if Trump's going to be the nominee, he's the one person who has beaten Donald Trump to be president. It's a powerful motivator.
I think that people play up Joe Biden's age too much. And when I say that, I don't mean that he's not old and feeble. I mean, the problem isn't 80. If Bernie Sanders was running, no one would be saying, oh, he's too old. Bernie Sanders hasn't lost a step. Bernie Sanders is exactly the same crotchety guy he was when he was 50. In fact, he looked 80 when he was 50.
Yeah, true.
But it's that Biden looks feeble. Biden seems confused. There is way too much footage. That is the issue. In fact, I saw a stat that Biden is the 12th president in history to even turn 80. Like out of 33
after leaving office.
Yeah, even after leaving office. 33 of the other presidents died before they got to Biden's current age. So that undermines what I'm saying. But I honestly don't think, no one's saying Trump's too old.
No.
Even though I think Trump has shown signs of being a little bit senile for a while myself. I think
Trump will turn 82 in office if he were to be re-elected.
Yeah. I think if you looked at Trump 20 years ago to now, he looks a very different person in the way he
Men
speaks.
age in their 70s.
Totally.
It catches up.
But they talk about more about Joe Biden because I think Joe Biden shows more signs.
Yeah.
But anyway, look, the fact is, Joe Biden, after his comparative victory to what people were expecting in the midterms, is in a very strong position, and it's not going to be, no one's going to be pushing him out because of his age. They'll be pushing him out because if they push him out, they'll be pushing him out because he has an approval rating of 31 if there's a recession.
Yeah.
So for him, it's going to be about the economy. It's not going to be about his age, I think.
One final observation I'd make about Joe Biden and his relationship to age and mortality as well. Much has been made about the fact that Joe Biden's first wife, Nelia, and their daughter were killed 50 years ago this month when Joe Biden turned 30. They were killed by a tractor trailer after they'd been Christmas shopping. And the fact that since then, of course, Beau Biden died of brain cancer in 2015. Hunter Biden has had his struggles. Joe Biden knows that being 80 doesn't necessarily determine how long you're going to live. He survived a brain aneurysm himself in 1988.
Yeah.
So he knows that life can end like that.
Yeah.
So when he says in his stock answer, people focus on, we'll deliberate, we'll decide, etc., etc. But he also talks a lot about fate when he talks about, not planning too far ahead and all these sorts of things. I think there's a clue in that. And I suspect that Biden will actually assess how he is feeling. He'll also listen to Dr. Jill Biden and other people around him to say, do you really want to bring this on yourself? They're going to be going after Hunter. They'll lay off Hunter if you're not running, surely.
Yeah.
So, and of course, Hunter is Joe Biden's sole surviving son. So you can imagine him feeling very protective at this point. And Republicans are potentially going to go after him, and they don't care if he relapses or suffers because of it.
I think that's a great call. In that I feel like the Republicans, they're always going to go after Hunter Biden, but they're going to go harder than they otherwise would because they now have reason to think they're going to be facing Joe Biden in 2 years' time. If they thought Joe Biden was just a sitting lame duck, I don't think they'd care so much about Hunter Biden. I think it'd be more about culture war and so forth, their investigations. So I think that's a fair point for them to consider. I just want to, because I'm just conscious of time, I would like to, if you don't mind, going to the Congress.
Sure.
Because it's a really interesting area where we're at with Congress, and it does relate to what we've just been talking about, which is we've all been assuming that there's going to be these Hunter Biden investigations for some time. We've also been assuming that Joe Biden's going to get impeached at least 2 times to match the Donald Trump impeachments, because that's what Trump would want, and that's what Trump would demand. But if there's a majority of 7 or 8, do they have the numbers to have an impeachment? Like, what's the new Congress going to look like? Because I don't know, to be honest, because we have this contingent of at least New York Republicans who know that they are going to get voted out in 2 years' time. They are there as an accident of fate. And they know New York is not going to keep them there. And the only way they have a chance of surviving in 2 years' time is to get some attention as being more moderate. That's the only way they're going to survive. And voting against an impeachment is the perfect way for them to get some attention and increase their chances of surviving in 2 years' time. Then there's that Don Bacon in Nebraska, who also seems to be a moderate and willing he said he'd be willing to elect a more centrist speaker than Kevin McCarthy if it comes to that, if there's gridlock. So there are potentially other moderates as well who might just say no. What are your thoughts?
It's a nice idea that partisanship would be overcome, and there were, from memory, I think 12 House Republicans that voted to impeach Donald Trump the second time.
Yep.
So, most of them are not in Congress anymore, or some won't be, including Kinzinger and Cheney. So look, there may be a dozen or so in the new Congress who are going to say, and maybe it won't be trying to defend Biden, but it might just be to say, we can't keep lowering the bar. We can't have these frivolous things. The real danger for Biden, though, is they're not going to be spending their time legislating.
No.
This is a Republican Congress that is about investigating and about throwing as much shade as they possibly can.
Which, to be fair, is the standard play
Yeah.
at this point in time.
And Republicans who are not Trump supporters are also quite happy to see Joe Biden tarred with the same brush as Donald Trump. So if you're pro-DeSantis or pro-Pompeo or Pence, wanting to basically say, you know, we want to put all of that behind us, not just Trump and Hillary and everything else, but also Joe. Let's just put all those old crooks behind us and move on. You know, so there'll be a lot of motivations that aren't just about propping up Trump or damaging Biden.
It's a real exclusive, by the way, on this extra.
Yeah.
Apparently there are pro-Pompeo people out there. I didn't know that.
Well, we'll soon find out. But you know, Mike Pompeo is a former member of the House himself.
Yeah.
You know, he definitely sees a lane for himself.
He does, apparently.
But you know, he's at 1%.
Yeah, if that. I think that might be a polling error, that one. I mean, of course, it's not just the moderates that you got in the next Congress. You've also got you got a real bifurcation amongst the Republicans, because you have the MAGA wing, so to speak, is bigger than ever. And Marjorie Taylor Greene appears to me to be the actual speaker, even if Kevin McCarthy is a speaker in name. Like, she has given as many press conferences so far as Kevin McCarthy has. And she's really, I mean, I saw an interview with her a little while back where she said, I got the quote here, I think that to be the best Speaker of the House and to please the base, McCarthy's going to give me a lot of power and a lot of leeway. And if he doesn't, they're going to be very unhappy about it. I think that's the best way to read that. And then that's not in any way a threat at all. It's just reality.
Yeah.
That's pretty cocky. That was months before the election.
Yeah.
And if you notice, she's been going real hard supporting Kevin McCarthy, which suggests to me she obviously has a deal.
Yeah.
She's basically spoken as if she's already on the Oversight Committee, so I think that's where she's going. So she'll be a key person in these investigations, which will make them crazier.
Yeah, and the crazies in Congress are nothing new. There are 435 of them, and there's always been about 30 who are nuts. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, there were crazies in there. Extremes on both sides, because of the way Congress works. You can get some pretty extreme candidates. And for most of certainly through the 20th century, these people were not taken seriously. And if they didn't vote along party lines or other, well, usually, I mean, for most of the 20th century, the Democrats had very big House majorities. But still, it's kind of weird now that with social media and cable news, you know, you can get people who, just because they're a member of Congress, they can say a shocking, surprising or upsetting thing, and it's amplified across the world.
Yeah.
The fact that people in Australia know who Lauren Boebert is and things that she has said in the past about drag queens.
Yeah, because she's a nobody.
She is less than nobody, but she becomes somebody because of the way that she outrages people.
Yeah.
When she barely hung on in her congressional district, and yet she is seen as, you know, because we tend to judge both sides by their extremes, she is now kind of, everyone thinks, well, she is the Trump movement. But
I'll tell you what's new. You're right, the extremists have always been there, like Stephen King in previous years. Was just MTG a couple of years ago. But
nobody listened to him.
I was going to say.
and they took him off committees.
The difference is that I think there's a real chance that Marjorie Taylor Greene is the Speaker in waiting. And Kevin McCarthy is herding cats during this Congress. He's got real problems trying to get... There's the moderate wing and there's the extreme wing, and both of them have the numbers to defeat any vote. So he's going to have a real problem getting anything done at all, especially when it comes to debt ceiling, which is going to be the big issue of next year. Like, that's going to be a massive, massive issue for him. And if he screws it up, he's gone as Speaker. I think she's next in line. She is the person, even though she's not formally next in line, she's the person speaking most for the Republican Party, even more than Kevin McCarthy. So I think she might be next in line. And the thing about her is not just is she nuts, but she's only in her second term. She doesn't know how Congress works. The Speaker usually has been around for 10 years.
Right.
So if she takes over as Speaker in 2 years or in 18 months or whatever, that's going to cripple any effectiveness or functionality of Congress whatsoever.
A lot of things have surprised me over the decade that we've been doing this program in one form or another. The very fact that Donald Trump got past the second debate in 2015, much less got to the White House, continues to stun and amaze me. If Marjorie Taylor Greene becomes Speaker of the House of Representatives, I will resign. I will not do this program ever
Don't
again.
say that, John. Don't say that.
I will be. I will. There's just no way that I could feel as though I have any position to comment on or analyse or understand American politics if Marjorie Taylor Greene is Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Well, that was an exclusive comment from the future summer drum host, John Barron. Because
Starting later this week. Actually.
that's right. Yeah. I don't know what else you want to talk about. There's one thing I want to talk about quickly, and then anything you want to do, and then we go.
We've got a bit of Steve Israel talking more about Nancy Pelosi and Congress as well.
Okay.
Are you going to move on from Congress, or we talk?
I want to talk about the same-sex marriage bill.
Okay, we'll come to that in just a moment.
Yeah, let's say, yeah.
While we're on the subject, in the program this week, we spoke to Steve Israel, who is Nancy Pelosi's number 2 in Congress, and we spoke some stuff that we didn't have time for on the air about what made Nancy Pelosi effective, but also what might happen in this next Congress. So here's some more of Steve Israel for you. Steve Israel, welcome to Planet America.
It's wonderful to be with you. Thank you.
Appointing a special counsel, Steve, to investigate a former president who's running to be president again, possibly considering laying criminal charges against Trump or others. That's a potential recipe for chaos, isn't it?
Well, that's the thing with Donald Trump. This is somebody who has been walking under a legal cloud, a political cloud for most of his career, and yet, it never seems to erupt on him. This is somebody who escapes all sorts of legal problems. Question is now, how does this affect his presidential campaign? Now, there's quite a bit of speculation in the States that one of the reasons that Donald Trump announced that he's running for president in 2024 is because he didn't believe that the Department of Justice had the nerve to continue to prosecute him as a candidate. And so he will manipulate that. He will say that he is being persecuted unfairly, that this special counsel is political, and a vast part of the population of the American electorate will agree with him.
The special counsel is meant to be independent, but can you really ever take the politics out of this? You know what the story is going to be. Merrick Garland appoints special counsel as payback for being denied a Supreme Court seat.
Well, that's the story that Donald Trump will write. But I must say that the Department of Justice is composed of professionals. These are people who've dedicated their lives to the rule of law and democratic norms. And Donald Trump is clearly going to suggest that this is a partisan witch hunt. This is the line that he uses consistently. I don't think that's fair. I think that this Justice Department would have reached the same conclusions no matter who committed these alleged crimes.
Steve, your old friend and ally Nancy Pelosi announced this week she's stepping down as Speaker and from any leadership role in the party. In your estimation, how consequential a Speaker was she?
Well, John, I was her chief political lieutenant as a member of the House of Representatives. I chaired the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. I must say I probably spent more time with her during the course of the day than any other member of Congress, talking about campaign strategies and political strategies. And I can tell you, people say that she was the most consequential woman in American politics in recent history. That's wrong. She was the most consequential human being in American politics in recent history. Were it not for her, America would not have passed the Affordable Care Act. Were it not for her, we wouldn't have made the investments that we are making in climate change and clean technologies. This is a political figure who refused to take no for an answer and shaped modern American politics.
So are you saying that Obamacare should rightly be known as Pelosi care?
There were times when the folks in the White House themselves figured, we've lost this battle. We don't know if we can get the votes. When we started on the Affordable Care Act, known as Obamacare, there was no path to getting the 218 votes in the House that were necessary. And it was Nancy Pelosi who famously said in the White House, if we have to knock on the door to get it passed, we will. If we have to kick in the door, we will. If we have to pole vault over the fence, we will. If we have to parachute through the roof, we will. But we will get it done. And we did.
What was her secret? How did she do it?
Yeah, so she had an absolute command of her caucus. The Democratic caucus in the House of Representatives is very diverse, quite disparate. You have conservative, so-called blue dog Democrats. You have the progressive caucus. You have the high-tech new Democrats. It's a very diverse and disparate caucus. And she found a way to unite all of those factions in a working coalition that would deliver the votes necessary to pass consequential legislation.
What advice do you think Nancy Pelosi would have for the presumed next Speaker of the House, Republican Kevin McCarthy?
Enjoy it for 2 years. You're going to give it up in 2 years. I think would be the advice that you would give them.
Finally, Steve Israel, just 2 weeks ago on this program, your former colleague, Senator Heidi Heitkamp, told us that she thinks that maybe if the Republicans in the House go after Hunter Biden, Joe Biden may have second thoughts and decide not to run again. It's just not worth it if they're going after his family. What do you think on that?
Well, I love Heidi Heitkamp. She's a wonderful friend. I will say, however, the only person who has insight into President Biden's thinking about 2024 is President Biden and the First Lady. There's so much speculation and people are trying to read his mind and the First Lady's mind. He's going to make his own calculation. Now, I will tell you that his family is very important to him, and they have suffered tremendously. But he also believes, if he believes that he is the only one who can defeat Donald Trump, I would suspect that he will run for re-election if that is his calculation. If he believes if Trump ends up being blasted out of the Republican primary and Trump has his own political problems right now within his own party, if there's another Republican who rises to the top and President Biden believes that there may be others who can defeat that Republican, maybe he changes his calculation. But I would caution people from speculating too much into what President Biden thinks or what decision he's going to make. He needs the time and space to make that decision on his own.
Steve Israel, thank you for being with us on Planet America.
My pleasure.
All right, now, very, very consequential vote that happened, not for nothing, in the aftermath of the election, in the lame duck session, when nobody was really paying too much attention, and that's probably the key to the success of it.
Yes. Now, this bill, I need to be clear about this. This does not legalise same-sex marriage in every state. I mean, at the moment it's legal because of the Supreme Court, but this doesn't legislate legal same-sex marriage in every state. What this does is, this legislates that every state has to recognise other states' legal marriages. So say for instance, Nebraska can outlaw same-sex marriage, assuming the Supreme Court overturns the court case which legalised same-sex marriage, assuming that's the case.
And this is hypothetical, but the door was opened ever so slightly to that in part of the judgment in the overturning of Roe versus Wade,
yes,
that this could be something that this Supreme Court could revisit, as could contraception and a bunch of other things.
This is something that Clarence Thomas specifically said in his dissent. Oh, no, dissent. It was his minority ruling. So this is something that's been flagged potentially. Look, I don't think it's going to happen because I think Gorsuch is a major supporter of same-sex marriage. But yeah, potentially. You never know. After Dobbs, you never know, right? Okay, so anyway, so that was the idea, to legislate this. So assuming there's no Supreme Court or they overturn Obergefell, this Nebraska would be able to outlaw same-sex marriage, but they would have to recognise someone who went to New York and got married with a same-sex marriage and then came back to Nebraska. Yep. That's what this does, right? So that way, any gay person can get married in America, even if their state illegalises it. Yep. And that state will still have to recognise it. That's what this does, okay? So to be clear. And one of the issues that was faced was, okay, where does it go with religious freedom? About, would churches be forced to recognise these marriages? And basically, once again, as the law stands at the moment, the Supreme Court is very concerned about religious freedom, and there's legislation on the books that says churches do not have to recognise this kind of stuff, right? That's how it exists at the moment. With this bill here, they also said that churches would not have to recognise it, and then religious groups. But they did it in a way which was kind of like, they said that this law is consistent with with existing law at the moment. So if all those laws got overturned, this law also would not protect religious freedom. But having said that, if we're in that hypothetical world, I mean, how many protections do you need to put in place? You know what I mean? Like, we've got hypotheticals on top of hypotheticals at the moment, right? But having said that, that gave conservatives who are against same-sex marriage a cudgel to hit Republicans over the head with, who supported this. Because they said, and also they put in an explicit exception for polygamy, saying states don't have to recognise multiple wives, but they didn't put in every exception on earth. So the reason I'm building this up is because you look at, say, The Federalist, which is a very conservative outlet, and the MAGA wing love it, right? Their response to this was to say, quote, the bill could potentially allow for open marriages and marriages involving a minor or relative. Now, there's no one on earth who is going to legalise that, either of them, right? But they're saying, oh, you didn't outlaw it, so therefore it's open to it, right? And this is what those Republicans who voted for this are going to face. So people say, oh, they're cowardly because they had to wait till after the election to do this. I actually think they're brave because the fact they waited until after the election meant that they knew there was only political downside, but they did it anyway because they thought it was right. And when I'm talking Republicans, they needed 10 Republicans to agree to this, to pass this through the Senate because of the filibuster. They got 12. I'm not even going to name them because I think it's really impressive. Roy Blunt, Richard Burr, Shelley Capito, Susan Collins, Joni Ernst, Cynthia Loomis, Lisa Murkowski, Rob Portman, Dan Sullivan, Mitt Romney, Tom Tillis, Todd Young. Congratulations. There is no upside to them other than doing what's right. And yes, you say, oh, 71% of people in America, according to Gallup, support same-sex marriage. But only 55% of Republicans do, which means the base does not. So they are taking a risk. These people are taking a risk at being primaried, but they did it anyway. So well done to them, and well done to the Mormon Church, which also backed this amendment as well, this law as well, which they did not have to do. But yeah, and obviously the Mormon Church is not a fan of same-sex marriage. No. But they are a fan of plurality and not mixing church with state. And so, yeah, good on them. I thought that was very impressive. So I just want to give them we talk about all the problems of Congress, we talk about craziness and all the rest of it. This was congressional people being sensible, doing what they can do to do something good, de-escalating. It's so rare, so welcome. So I just want to give them a big pat on the back.
As Winston Churchill famously said of the United States, the same can be said of Congress. They will do the right thing after they've exhausted all other opportunities and possibilities. I think that's all the time we have for Off the Planet for now. And for this year, we will be back in the middle of 2023. I assume we'll do Off the Planet then as well. Unless, of course, Speaker Marjorie Taylor Greene has taken the gavel, in which case...
it must be someone else.
Dr. Dave will do this. That'll be all right.
Yeah, we will see you guys. God knows how much we're going to have to catch up with in 6 months' time. Yeah. But in the middle of next year, pretty much in time for the debates, I would have thought. First debate.
The formal start of the campaign. It's just that Trump informally started it last week. We'll see you soon. Take care.
See you. Bye.